Hello, folks. You're listening to Revenge of the Drive-In, the podcast brought to you by Grandma Sophia's Cookies, where we talk about two drive-in movies and discuss whether or not they make for a good drive-in double feature. I'm your host, Patrick, and I'm joined here by my usual host,
Jim. Hello.
And Jim, we are talking about The Fly and King Kong vs. Godzilla, two films that, as of recently now with King Kong vs. Godzilla, both have popular remakes. Mm-hmm. But, of course, we're talking about the originals here. And I guess it's debatable if Godzilla vs. Kong is truly a remake anyways, because it follows a different series continuity and just who cares? Jim, anything to say about either one of our movies before we jump right into The Fly?
Yes, I was
going to say fly right into The Fly, and it just didn't sound good
you
in my
missed
head.
it. Can't go back. Yeah, I've actually never seen either movie. I haven't even seen the remake of The Fly. And I haven't seen the quote-unquote new make of the Godzilla vs. Kong. The Fly, for me, is something that I always knew what the story was, because that's one of those famous movies that everybody talks about.
It's the dangers of scientific advancement. That's a big theme in 50s sci-fi, and understandably so, because we just had, atomic weapons invented, and we can see where or some consequences in the real world of science, I don't know. I like The Fly.
It's awesome. It's a fantastic movie. The Godzilla, or I guess King Kong versus Godzilla, I again have never seen that before. Interesting to watch.
Sure.
I don't know if it was necessarily a pleasure to watch.
Oh.
I have to tell you, we spoke about this the other day. I had asked you, I said, which one are we watching? I assumed the sub or whatever, and you said, yeah, the sub. I could not...
I just, at this point, just watch it. Because they used to have it on HBO Max, but they don't have it anymore. So I was able to find a copy, but otherwise I was going to go back to my VHS copy that I wore out as a kid and watched a dubbed version. If it came to that, I would have. So I didn't really have too much of a problem if you chose to watch the dubbed version, because I'm very familiar with it from when I was young.
So I have a question before that, because before we get into either of these, but I'm just going to finish this point here. I looked, if you're living in Canada, it's going to be hard for you to find the sub version of King Kong versus Godzilla. I couldn't find it on any streaming service. It was not on like Crave, it wasn't on Netflix in Canada, it wasn't on Amazon Prime, wasn't even on YouTube to rent. I went down to my local video store to rent it, but somebody had it out. So it was... yeah, so I found it on YouTube.
Well, hey, it's a popular film, I guess.
It is, I guess it is.
60 years later.
Yeah. Well, and so my question to you is the original...
Oh, I just remembered. I forgot to return that from several years ago. No, I'm kidding.
That was like me with the original Godzilla that I rented when we did that episode. I had it for like 2 months.
Oh, was that the one that kept you from going back to the video store?
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to get in trouble.
I didn't realize it was Godzilla. Okay.
With the original movie, was there that much of those like English characters, of those newscasters in the original? Or was that something that was put on for English audiences?
English newscasters. I had American military. I didn't have English newscasters.
Yeah. American newscaster.
Wait, you had American newscasters?
Well, he wasn't really a newscaster. They're doing like news stuff. They were doing like bulletins throughout the movie.
Oh, okay. So you must have had some different stuff then. Okay, a little bit.
It doesn't matter. We can talk about The Fly first, and when we get to that, I'll tell you about my trials and ordeals with King Kong versus Godzilla.
All right. Well, this is going to be exciting. But Jim, why don't you start off with The Fly?
The Fly, 1958. I forget who it's directed by off the top of my head.
Kurt Newman.
Thank you.
Who died like shortly after the movie came out, and this was like by far his biggest movie, and it's just sad he never got to see it. I mean, he saw the movie. I mean, he never got to see it be popular, obviously, and that sucks.
Well,
Whatever.
It's sad that he didn't
Life
get to
sucks.
make more stuff in this kind of like science fiction vein, because I think what he did with this was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen The Return of the Fly, which is a sequel to this, which is notoriously bad. And it's like, yeah, you'd think if he stuck around, maybe they could have made a good sequel. I don't know. Who knows? I just know there's a scene in that where, well, it's in black and white because it's like a cheaper movie than this one. This one's in color, obviously. But there's a guy with the fly mask on and like a suit, like running through the woods, and he stops in the middle of the shot to like adjust his fly mask.
No, it sounds like it sounds like a fan project, like something that you would like film in high school because you like The Fly, you know?
It's a lot of bad horror movies like that, though.
Well, speaking of bad horror movies, probably the biggest star in this is Vincent Price, and not that he's in like a lot of bad horror movies, but he is in a lot of bad horror movies.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a lot of schlocky movies, and I was thinking about him in this because at this point, I really enjoyed seeing him in this because even though it is a horror movie, he's not in it because he's horror star Vincent Price. This is probably before he really was a horror star. At this time, he was just character actor Vincent Price.
Yeah.
You know, it's A House on Haunted Hill, The Tingler, those kinds of movies, and that came out a little bit after this, and then those Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies are really kind of what cemented him as that. But I mean, he's in film noirs. I mean, yeah, he was The Invisible Man at one point in the 40s, but I don't know. It's just like I even though it's a horror movie, he's not the antagonist and he's not the protagonist. He's not the villain. He's not the monster, which is probably the best role that he's at. He's great at playing kind of evil genius character, which we've seen a couple times already in this podcast. But I like it. He's just like a normal guy here, and I think he's good.
Yeah, well, in this, he's like a vehicle for information, for the audience to receive information through.
Yeah, well, I mean, that brings up just how this movie has an interesting structure, obviously, and we'll get into it, but it starts basically at the end of the story, and the majority of the story is told through flashback, and it works because it's being recounted to him. And after a while, because it goes on for so long, you almost forget that the entire thing is being told in flashback, but then the ending is amazing. The ending is just a fantastic ending, you know, back in the present time, and we'll have to talk about that, obviously. But
yeah, so I guess, because I totally agree with you. So I guess with that, we'll get right into it. We begin with at the Delam Brothers factory and in Montreal, I guess, which I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, I looked this up out of curiosity because, like, it's based on a short story, and why is it set in Montreal? That's like a weird thing for like a Hollywood movie, and not, I mean, it obviously wasn't shot in Montreal, but I looked it up, and the short story is a French story. So my guess is they probably just kept the character names, but didn't want to set it in France for some reason, so it's set in Montreal. That's probably it. I don't know.
Here's also,
I've never read the story.
Here's also a bit of quick trivia for anybody out there who's not familiar with Canadian cities, because why would you be? Montreal was like the hub of Canada from the 20s to the late 60s, maybe.
Yeah, I know
like
when my
early
dad
70s.
was a kid, it was the biggest city in Canada, like when he was young.
Yeah, Toronto only started to become more of a hub in southern Canada when the Quebec government kind of put in all these like anti-English laws.
Yeah,
and
they
stuff like
kind
that.
of went off the rails.
Yeah, then people are like, oh, let's get the fuck out of this place. We don't want to hang out here and party here anymore. Let's go to Toronto, where they're building the CN Tower and stuff. It's kind of weird to think, like, in 1958, Montreal was a happening spot, you know? So I guess you could kind of see somebody doing, like, weird scientific stuff in Montreal. But anyways, the Delam Brothers factory, that's where we are. We meet up with a security guard who finds Andre Delam dead in a hydraulic press. His head and arm have been crushed. And his wife, Helene, who's played by Patricia Owens, she flees as soon as the guard approaches. And she
I like how much
telephones.
blood there is here. It's very gruesome for a 50s
Yeah,
movie.
it's great. It's great. I wish they
And
had
it looks
lingered
gorgeous
on
in
it.
color. Like it's that like bright Technicolor. Like I love the look of that.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what I was going to say. I wish they'd lingered on it like a little longer because it is that bright Technicolor blood, you know? Andre's wife, she telephones Francois Delam, who's Vincent Price, who I'm going to refer to as VP throughout the rest of this, to tell him
Just
that...
call him Veep.
Veep. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. What's her name?
Helen?
No, Veep. Who's the Veep? It's
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Thank you.
Another
That's
French
it.
name.
So Vincent Price is the brother of Andre. He's Francois, and Helene telephones him.
Do you know who Andre is, by the way? What actor that is, or what
I
you would
forgot to write his
recognize him
name
from?
down, but I don't recognize him from anything as far as I know.
Well, he has two different names. I'm more familiar with him as David Hedison. He's sometimes listed as Al Hedison, but he's in, I think it's Live and Let Die. He's
What?
well, no, yeah, it is Live and Let Die, and then also License to Kill. He's the American CIA agent. The name's blanking.
Felix?
Felix Leiter. He's Felix Leiter in those two
Wow.
movies.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I'll give it to him.
We
That's
also
pretty
have a Bond girl in King Kong vs. Godzilla, by the way.
Oh, is she the one who's
She's the
mind.
one in the Asian Bond movie. Which one do you think? You only live twice.
That's what I was gonna say. I didn't want to sound racist or anything saying it. Yeah. Yeah, well, I know what movie she must be in.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Charles Gray's in that too, and he plays an Asian dude.
To be fair, Sean Connery's in You Only Live Twice playing an Asian man for a bit.
Yeah, but it's a disguise. It's a little different. It's
Yeah.
still
I'm Japanese.
rough to watch, but it's a little different.
So after the police and Francois visit the crime scene, they go to see Helene, who confesses that she murdered her husband, but she doesn't really give a motive for why she killed him, and she's a little hazy on the details. Like at one point, the inspector says, "Oh, you crushed him with a hydraulic press." She goes, "Yeah, I did. How many?" He's like, "How many times?" She's like, "Once." He goes, "Oh, but the stroke count was set to 2." And she goes, "Oh, of course it was. Yes, I changed it. Yes, I
Yeah,
remember
and
now."
not only that, but Francois also basically insists that she wouldn't have the knowledge to operate that machine. Like someone would have to teach her.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. And at this point in the movie, this very early stage, we see that she's sort of obsessed with flies. She scrutinizes one as it lands on a lampshade. For instance, in another scene a little later on, she leaps out of her bed to try to save a fly from being swatted by her maid.
Yeah.
And she sobs with happiness when it isn't a certain kind of fly, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. Which I like that how that kind of sets up, like, we're seeing that and, like, you're like, okay, what's going on here? But, like, obviously it's going to go somewhere, but I like that, like, you see how insane she looks to everybody else, but it will all be explained. It all makes sense.
Exactly, yeah. You just gotta hang tight. It all makes sense. We also learn from Veep that his brother was a bit of a mad scientist, in a sense. He was always testing new equipment and new ideas and then bringing them to Francois, Vincent Price, for their company. The next time we see Vincent Price, he's having dinner with his, what is it, nephew? No. Yeah, nephew, right?
Yeah, nephew.
Yeah, Philippe, who, again, his nephew. And the boy mentions that his mom is looking for a fly with a white head, a funny-looking arm, and that this kid saw it earlier in the day in Veep's study. Mm-hmm. So Veep is starting to put two and two together, and he gets a bit of a brainwave, and he heads over to Helene's place, which I think he's living in the same place as her for the time being.
Probably because she just confessed to murder and make sure she's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, whatever. Well, she's a woman. This is the 50s. She's no longer his husband. What's she going to do?
We got to stay close to him. But he heads over to Helene, and he lies to her. And he says, "Hey, I've caught this fly in my study, and I want to know all about what happened." And after a bit of back and forth, she relents and tells Veep that she's like, I'll tell you everything about what happened and the inspector, as long as you call him here, because I'm not telling the story twice, because it's too painful for me to recount. And you also have to promise to kill the fly.
And we're not watching Return of the Fly.
Yeah. Vincent Price agrees. He's like, yeah, I'll listen to your story and I'll kill whatever fly you want me to kill. I don't care. So this is all when we start going into a flashback. So, and I guess I should also point out, up to this point, the movie has a kind of murder mystery vibe, right? Yeah. There's a lot of police inspector. There's a lot.
Yeah,
of
not
a
who done
scene.
it, but a why she done it.
Why done it?
It's like a why done it.
Yeah. When Helene finally starts telling you the story, as we mentioned briefly earlier, we are thrust back in time to about a month ago. We see Andre pulling Helene into his basement lab to show her what he's been working on. And I like, there's a few lines here, I forget what the first one is, but she asks him, oh, is it this thing? And he's like, no. And she goes, oh, it's not the portable reactor, is it? And I love that kind of like 50s fascination with nuclear reactors, you know? And he's like, oh, no, it's not the nuclear reactor. He's like, it's a teleporter, is essentially what he says. And he places this ashtray in a cube, which I don't even know how to describe it other than a cube, this glass cube. And he flips a switch, and all of these awesome colored, like neon lights turn on, and all these neat, like Star Trek-y looking instruments turn on, and there's all kinds of noises. And then this cube fills with this bright purpley blue light, and whoosh, the thing's gone, it disappears. And Andre opens this sliding door, and you can see on the other side of the lab, there's a second teleporter, and in that teleporter is the ashtray.
I like how the scene ends too, because you think like, wow, he's done it. This dude's amazing. But then she looks at it and sees the "Made in Japan" writing on the back is now reversed.
Exactly. Yeah, she has that funny
I love
line.
how this scene concludes with that, because then it's like, we've still got some problems with this. This isn't perfected technology yet.
Well, exactly, and like Andre is making it sound like this is the end to world hunger. This is the end to airplanes and cruise ships and trains and cars and whatever.
Right.
You know, we can go to other planets now. If they plunk one of these things on the moon or Mars, we can just teleport there. And she's holding this ashtray, and like you said, the "Made in Japan" is reversed, and she kind of says that cute little line where she said, "Oh, I hope you don't put me in one of these things. I don't want to turn out like this."
He doesn't want to turn out made in Japan.
Racism. And Andre takes this really hard, essentially. He leads her out of the lab by ignoring her, and he gets back to work to try to solve this issue.
And this is where we really see the mad scientist, like how deeply focused he is. We see it with his family, which, this is domestic drama going on, but like his wife, his kid, talking about how they never see him, never have dinner with him anymore because he's just working on this machine all day.
I just want to talk to you about the lab. I love that set. It's kind of minimalistic in the amount of things that are in there. Like if you compare that lab to Dr. Frankenstein's lab, it's two very different labs.
Well, it's in color, first of all.
Well, exactly. First off, it's in color.
They remembered to paint the set this time.
Exactly, yeah.
That's how color film works, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I loved those neon lights that we got like 50 shots of throughout the whole movie every time they turned that teleporter on.
Okay.
I just
I don't
loved
know if it's
them.
50, but
yeah. But dude, if I had the money, I would hire somebody to make me neon lights that looked exactly like that. I just love those. I don't know what it is about them. And the goggles that they wear to watch this thing teleport.
Oh, I do like the goggles.
It's so 50s sci-fi, Like it's just awesome. I wish I had a pair of sunglasses like that. It's like something Daft Punk would be wearing.
Or it's like the goofy glasses from Ghoulies. It's like that scene.
So Andre gets back to work to perfect this teleporter, and sometime later, I don't know, days, weeks, he sends a newspaper through the teleporter, and it comes out perfectly. All the words are the right way around and everything. So he's like, "Oh, this is great." And then out of the corner of his eye, their house cat, Dandelo,
This is great. I don't have to continue printing newspapers in Hebrew anymore. Oh yeah, this is when he kills the cat.
Yeah, this is when he kills the cat.
I hate cats. This is awesome. This seems great.
And he puts the cat in a saucer of cream in the teleporter, and then the cat just doesn't show up on the other end. It disappears, and he's killed his house
he
cat.
like hears it. It's like
yeah,
he kind of like hears it, but
fading
it
off
hasn't
into the ether. Pretty
manifested
much,
itself, so it's just lost in the atoms of the air or something.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. Well, a few weeks after this, Andre has actually perfected his teleporter. So to celebrate, he takes Helene to the ballet. They pop some bubbly after they teleported, of course. And after they teleport a guinea pig, who survives and doesn't disappear like the cat. And I guess that's just to show us that, it finally works now. There's no issue with it. And though Helene is really happy for her husband, she makes him promise never to test on animals again. Dun, dun,
oh, yeah, because he admits that that's what happened to the cat, because they just assumed the cat ran away or something.
Yeah, there's a line earlier. She's like,
eventually.
She's like, my husband's in the lab all the time. My kid's acting like a crazy person. And I've lost the cat. I don't know where it is. Turns out it's gone. It was reduced to atoms and scattered all over the universe. So the next day, Andre invites Francois, his brother, over to see the teleporter in action. But when Veep arrives at the house, Andre has holed himself up in the lab, and he's posted a note on the door saying something to the effect of, "Do not disturb."
Right.
And at the same time, Philippe tries to show his mom a funny-looking fly with a white head and a white arm, but she dismisses him. So the whole day passes, Francois is long gone, and Andre still hasn't left his lab. He hasn't even touched food that's been put outside of his lab by the maid. So Helene decides to take a look, and to her shock, she finds a note typed by Andre that says, "I need your help. There's been an accident in the lab. You have to find yeah, I'm gonna let you in. You have to promise not to look at me. You have to find a white-headed fly in the other room. Stuff like that. They're communicating via knocks, like knocks on the desk, knocks on the door.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's his yes and no and stuff like that.
Yeah, one knock yes, two knocks yo, two knocks yo,
three knocks yes. Also, why not? He can't say no.
Anyways, Helene enters the lab, and her husband looks really goofy. I really like this movie, but this part's kind of.
He's got a towel over his head.
He's got a black towel draped over his head.
Always got his arm in his pocket.
Exactly.
His coat pocket.
She goes in, looks for the fly in the other room. She can't find it, and she's trying to convince him to go up to bed. She goes, "Oh, honey, don't worry. It doesn't matter what you look like. I'll just sneak you upstairs. We'll go to bed." And he kind of loses his temper. He loses his composure, I should say, and he throws his arm, which is connected to the hand that he's hiding, and you see like this fly claw, like a fly leg hand.
Great stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and Helene is shocked, as anyone would be. So it turns out that Andre had actually successfully teleported himself, but I guess it was when he tried again, a fly had gotten into the chamber with him, and their atoms intertwined, leaving him with the head and arm of a fly, and a fly with his head and arm and part of an upper torso, I guess.
Yeah, we eventually see that fly.
Yeah, it's great. That's fantastic. The next day, Helene, the housemaid, Philippe, they're all spending their time trying to catch this white-headed fly. And after not spotting it for the whole day, Helene's about to give up when she spots it in the house. She tries to catch it, slips through a crack in the window, and it flies away. And she's devastated because now she fully grasps what's going on. Because at this point, Andre believes that there's no chance in hell that they're ever going to catch this fly. And he feels less human and I guess like more fly. Like he feels like he's losing his willpower.
You see it in his performance. He's becoming less and less, even though he doesn't say anything, since the beginning of this. You see it in his performance that he's, becoming less human. Not necessarily more fly-like, because what are flies like, but he's not all there.
Exactly, yeah. He's becoming just agitated, more irritated.
What do they feed him, like sugar water or something?
Wasn't it cream with rum?
Is that
or
what it was?
Milk with rum?
Oh, so he's a drunk, too.
What a drunk. Goddamn, Andre. Serves the French right. What drunks.
That man is a CIA agent.
Felix Leiter.
He gets his leg bit off by a shark in which one is that?
License to
Kill.
Yeah.
Which they really screwed it. Like that whole movie, it's like it's Bond's revenge mission, right? Like he's not acting as part of MI6. But then they didn't even kill off Felix Leiter. They just like reveal that they had, he's okay. And I'm like, what? I thought that was what this was all about. I thought he was going to murder people, but nope.
You gotta admit, though, License to Kill by Gladys Knight, pretty solid song.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Doesn't really stand out to me.
Okay, we'll talk about this off mic, sir. So Helene, after Andre is saying, you're gonna have to kill me eventually if we can't find this fly because I can't live like this. This is insane. Like, this is insanity. Helene convinces him to go back into the teleporter to try to sort himself out. And he's trying to explain to her, look, I still need the fly. And she goes, well, just try for me. Just try. So he goes, okay, I will. So he goes in, but he still comes out.
I just realized, is this a Clint Howard origin story, this movie? Does that explain his appearance?
I think so, yeah, that might be it. What do you think he went into a teleporter with?
One of those aliens from Star Trek, probably.
Oh, no. One of those, remember in the original series, they had, at the end credits, they always had, stills from various episodes, and there was, those big bulbous green head aliens with, the big white eyes. You know what I'm talking about? You'd know him if you saw him. Okay. I think that's what he went into the teleporter with.
Okay. Maybe the dog with the horn glued to its head.
That's the best alien in the whole show. That's the best one.
It's adorable.
So, yes, Andre goes back in the teleporter, but he comes out still looking like a fly. And we know that because there's this awesome reveal when Helene just snatches the cloth off his head, and he's got this awesome fly mask on with these big, beautiful, bulbous, fly-like eyes, and she just starts screaming, and we cut to his view, and he sees
Yeah.
like 100 Helenes screaming in shock.
That shot
and
is
horror.
amazing. That is so cool and so creative. It's like a kaleidoscopy thing. I mean, it's relatively simple, but it's so like imaginative to give us that look. Like it's just really cool.
Yeah,
It's
it was
also
great.
just one hell of a scream.
She was fantastic. She was absolutely great. And then when she stumbles back and passes out, that was just like it was a little over the top, but it was fantastic. You know, I was like, well, this is pretty solid acting.
I think overall the acting in this movie is quite good. I think like a lot of people. I'm gonna segue a bit here. I'm gonna talk a tiny bit about the remake. I understand you haven't seen it, but I'm talking about remakes in general of 50s sci-fi, right? Because there's a lot of, or maybe not a lot of, but there's a few famous remakes of 50s sci-fi movies that are heralded as classics, maybe more so than the originals. There's The Thing from Another World and John Carpenter's The Thing. There's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was remade in the 70s. And then there's The Blob, and then there's this. Those are kind of like the big four of movies that are all like classic as original films, and then kind of have classic remakes to a certain extent. Probably The Blob, the least of them, but The Blob's a fine movie. Chuck Russell's The Blob. But I think a lot of people, a lot of like horror fans who like those movies, like those remakes, I think a lot of them don't really see the original movies and kind of assume they're just kind of schlocky or stupid, right? Because
Yeah.
we think of like bad 50s science fiction, right? The Ed Wood being, being the extreme and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
stuff that was on Mystery Science Theater 3000, like that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but those movies were good. I love 50s science fiction. I think it's it can be a bit boring at times because it's very dialogue heavy, or it tends to be, and there's a lot of expository dialogue and all that stuff. And then the acting too, oftentimes has aged, poorly. I think in this movie though, I don't find this movie boring at all. I think it's once the problem is introduced, there's that ticking clock element. Even though you're never actually certain how much time he has, he
Yeah.
is running out of time. And I think that works really well. And I think every scene, once we realize that he's, half fly, is just really, really tense. I think the acting's good. I think Patricia Owens is really good here. She's very convincing as woman whose husband has become a fly. I think, I mean, it's not an easy role to pull off. And I'm not going to...
What does she have to look back to for that?
Yeah. But I mean... The acting in this movie, I'm not saying it's like Oscar worthy or even Oscar worthy for the 50s, certainly not comparing it to like Daniel Day-Lewis and all that stuff, but I don't know, I think this is a pretty well acted movie even by today's standards. Like it's not amazing, but I think everyone, even the kid, I think is pretty good. Like everyone is convincing enough for material that if handled differently, if handled with a worse script or worse actors, would be goofy as hell.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people watching this will still find it goofy, and that's fine. I don't. I think this is a really well done movie.
You know what? And I totally agree with you. I think this could have gone in such a poor direction with lesser actors, lesser writing.
Right. And that's, like I said, I haven't seen it, but that's supposedly what Return of the Fly is.
Yeah, too. This is a hot take here. I think perhaps the actor I liked the least in the movie was Vincent Price.
Okay. Well, I mean, he has a decidedly very different role than anybody else. I mean, well, so I don't know. I
near the beginning as well, I found that he was delivering some lines more like, I can't even just describe it, like he was almost auditioning. And I'm not an actor, so who am I to criticize? And I'm also not Vincent Price, so who am I to criticize? He was just delivering some lines kind of strangely, I thought, in this kind of over-dramatic way. But then again, that is Vincent Price.
I think I understand what you mean, but I didn't have a problem with that. I thought he was perfectly fine, I guess.
Well, exactly. I mean, by the end of the movie, I thought, like, it didn't really detract for me. I just thought it was kind of interesting that this world-renowned actor was being a little hammy. However, that being
Well,
said,
Vincent Price has always been a little hammy.
Well,
I mean, this is some of the
exactly.
least hammy you will see him in, at least as far as horror is concerned.
Yeah, well, I mean, this isn't, the abominable Dr. Phibes for sure.
Or House on Haunted Hill, or
Yeah.
all the Tingler.
But I will say, have you seen the trailer for the original Fly?
Possibly, certainly not anytime recently.
Well, it's fantastic because it's almost like the trailer starts with Vincent Price walking up to the camera and kind of excitedly saying, "This tale is so terrifying. It's so awful. I couldn't even begin to describe it to you, and I don't really want to go into much detail about it. You'll just have to see it." It's a fantastic trailer with Vincent Price.
Okay.
It's like, if any listeners out there, you get the chance, get a second, pause this, watch it on YouTube. It's fantastic. And also watch this on YouTube as well, because that's where I found it anyways. Because again, in Canada, this
The
was
movie.
not on any streaming sites.
I wasn't sure what the latter this is.
Oh yeah.
What's he
Well, the trailer for The Fly
Sure.
from 1958, and also King Kong versus Godzilla. Because again, if you're in Canada, you're SOL. You're up the creek without a paddle on this one. So anyways, Helene passes out from sheer shock and horror. While she's passed out, Andre is so upset about the whole thing that he starts to destroy the teleporters and burn his notes and journals that he's kept about them. And he erases this chalkboard with equations and stuff on them. And he was doing this because he can't possibly let this fall into other people's hands. This will just this technology will just run amok. Think of
someone will fuck it up, right? Just the way he fucked it up, because he fucked it up with good intentions.
exactly,
right?
exactly.
It's the same thing as the original Godzilla. The scientist that creates the
that water, thing.
oxygen destroyer
Yeah.
insists on going down to detonate it so he can die with it, so no one else can copy that technology.
Yeah,
which is
exactly,
awesome.
exactly. It's exactly like that. You're right.
It's heroic. And
Very
it's
heroic.
awesome seeing a guy with a fly mask just run around with an axe. There's just something satisfying about that too.
Yeah.
But I'm a simple man, okay? I enjoy seeing people with fly masks running around with axes. I'm not.
Well, and also,
who can resist?
well,
you
and
know?
also, it's a really good mask. It's a good looking.
It is,
mask.
yeah. When it's got
Compared
the
to-
close-ups, it's got the moving around of the little mandibles or whatever around the mouth.
Yeah, the sucker thing too, and the eyes look beautiful. And compared to the costumes we see in our next movie, this
Oh,
this is
God,
better by far.
Yeah, but now here's the question though: do you want Fly Mask running around with an axe, or do you want King Kong getting drunk and passing out? Which is the more?
I'll
satisfying
take King
to
Kong
watch?
getting drunk and passing out. 'Cause
Exactly.
I thought that was
I
hilarious.
think it's close though. I think it's close.
Yeah. Well, Andre, in his kind of final moments of humanity, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
or being able to fight off this fly, he starts writing on the chalkboard, "You have to take me to. You have to kill me. You have to get rid of me. We got to stop this. You need to kill me now," is essentially what he's saying. And then he writes, "Love you," to Helene. And together
This is
they head over.
famously, I said the same thing after seeing Jack and Jill.
Oh, that's the joke of the day right there. Fuck you, Adam Sandler.
Nah, he's fine. He's fine.
I like him. I like him. That
I'm over Adam. Adam Sandler is a joke. It's not even really worth pointing out at this point.
So together, Helene and Andre head over to the factory. Andre sets the hydraulic press. He lays himself on the slab and he points to Helene to hit the red button. The first press crushes his head, and I don't know if you caught this, but there's kind of like a wide of his back, which most of his body's obscured by a pole, but there's a wide, and but on the ground there's a bunch of goop. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then because the first press only got his head, Helene has to run over and pick up his fly arm and put that on the press, and then the second press obviously gets his arm. So we cut back to present day, and the inspector and Francois are shocked by this crazy, insane, unbelievable story. Right. And Francois kind of instinctively...
I mean, to be fair, though, Vincent Price shouldn't be shocked. He's been in dozens of far goofier movies than this. The very next year, he makes a movie called The Tingler, which is about if someone cannot scream, a monster grows on their spinal cord until it comes out and eats people. It's great. The Tingler's awesome.
Do you think if Vincent Price was alive today, he'd be doing all of the schlockiest shittiest horror movies today? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he'd be in Shark Exorcist.
That's a good question, because I have a hard time believing he would say no, but at the same time, there are certain movies he's above. Like, he's not in those Mystery Science Theater movies, you know?
Yeah, but he's not above Scooby-Doo, and we've had this conversation in
what's wrong?
before.
Scooby-Doo was like a haven for cameos. Isn't Vince Lombardi in Scooby-Doo? It's like they just gave a cameo to like everybody. Like, that's different. I don't know. I think Vincent Price would have enough respect for himself to avoid the Sharknado movies and stuff like that. Maybe he'd be an Aqua Slash. Maybe
Aqua Slash. Yeah, you know what? That'd be a good one. Wouldn't he be great as like a pool lifeguard? Like.
Like David Hasselhoff in Piranha 3 Double D.
Yeah, that'd be great. He'd be yelling in like his booming stage voice, "Hey, be careful of the slide."
No, he'd be in like the Underworld movies though. He would be like the big bad guy in the Underworld
or like Blade
movies, probably.
I could see him in Blade. Doing
yeah,
something.
I don't even remember.
So, anyways, back in present day, Francois believes her story pretty much immediately, but the inspector thinks she's insane. And the inspector tells Veep, he's like, look, the only way I'm going to believe this crazy, outlandish story is if you catch this fly everybody's been harping on about so much. So, I love this scene so much. So as Veep is sitting outside waiting for the cops and nurses, I assume, to drag her off to a loony bin, this fly gets caught in a spider's web next to his bench. And we, the audience, can just hear it yelling, "Help me! Help
I love
me!"
how like soft that sound is at first, because you can hear it. You know you're hearing something, but it is very faint.
That's exactly it. And you're like, wait, what is that? Oh, that's weird. Somebody's yelling, "Help me!" You know?
And the close-up of this thing is amazing, because it's just a guy, you know, with a fly body costume.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And it's like and then there's like a costume spider too that we get a couple shots of. It's awesome. It's a little silly, but it's great.
It's fantastic. And I guess like the climax here is this fly is trapped in the web. Vincent Price is sitting next to it, and you think he's going to hear this fly, and he doesn't. And he goes back inside to watch these nurses drag poor Helene away. Right. And as he's leaving, as everything's kind of wrapping up, Philippe runs into the house looking for his mom. Veep grabs him, and they're just kind of shooting the shit walking down the stairs. And the kid very nonchalantly, casually says, "Oh, hey, I saw that fly again." And Vincent Price is like, "Oh, yeah, did you? Wait, what? You saw this fly?"
Yeah.
Where? He goes, "Oh, on the spider web up by the bench." So Price and the inspector run out, and as you mentioned, there's that close-up of this guy in like a fly costume stuck to this web screaming, "Help me," with this great spider costume coming in to eat him. And just as the spider devours this fly, and after the inspector and Vincent Price have both seen it, the inspector lifts up this rock and just crushes the spider and this mutant fly in one go. And right then and there, the inspector and Vincent Price go, I think we could rule this as a suicide. We could say the guy killed himself in the hydraulic press. Yeah, I think that's the way we'll
Vincent
go with
Price like turns it on the guy, and he's like, "Wait a second, if she committed murder, so did you."
Exactly. Yeah. If she killed a fly with a human body, and you've killed a human with a fly's body, then you both are murderers. And yeah, so it was ruled a suicide, and Philippe, Veep, and Helene live happily ever after, I guess, after that. But there's a great line at the very end when I can't remember for the life of me.
Can you really live happily after your husband turned into a fly?
No, I don't think so. But they live ever after.
I think that's going to be on their minds for a while. When years. Philippe is old enough to know what happened to his dad, he'll just be like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Yeah, oh, what my dad was insane. Well, yeah, but there's that great line at the end when Philippe asks Vincent Price what happened to his father. And what does he say? He's like, "Your father..."
He says he tampered in God's domain.
That's it.
No, it's not. That's the final line in
Pride
of the Monster.
No, what does he say? Don't say that. He says...
It works more here than it does in Pride of the Monster.
Yeah, what does he say, though? He goes, your father... Oh, fuck. Now you fucked me up. I wrote it down. I can't find it. Anyways, great line. That's the end of the movie.
Just whatever.
Hold on. Let me Google this. No,
line. Okay, whatever. It's fine.
Never mind. That's it. That's the end of the movie. Patrick, what'd you think about The Fly from 1950?
I really, really, really enjoy The Fly. For me, because I love 50s sci-fi. 50s sci-fi to me, and I'll talk about. I'm talking about the long 50s, okay? In literary studies, we have this thing called the long 18th century, which is basically the restoration of the English crown to like the Victorian age. So it's the 1700s, or it's the 1660s through the 1830s or so. And people call it the long 18th century just because the 18th century in literature is kind of boring, so they want to include more stuff, I assume. I don't know. But I'm going to talk about, I love the long 50s in science fiction because I'm including the Twilight Zone, which started in the 50s but was mostly in the 60s, the Outer Limits, all that stuff, that 60s stuff. I think once we get to Star Trek, we're moving away from the long 50s. So I'm going from 50 to about 65 or so. I love that. That to me is like, the movie doesn't even have to be great for me to kind of be into it already, just because I love the science fiction imagination from that time period. I do think this is a really good movie. I think it's in that second tier of 50s sci-fi, where, I'd put it along with like Quatermass and The Thing from Another World, The Blob. It's not quite in that The Day the Earth Stood Still, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Forbidden Planet, that first tier. But it's better than something like The Terror from Beyond Space, or Invaders from Mars. Like it's really good. I enjoy it. It's got a unique story structure that I think really works and really kind of amps up the suspense and the excitement when things get going. And yeah, I appreciate it. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that makes it great is that it's first and foremost exciting to watch, because you, like, even though you kind of know what the outcome of this story is going to be, you are still on the edge of your seat, because you're waiting for that moment that Andre turns himself into a fly, and then after that you're waiting
to see it.
Exactly.
Because even when you kind of know that's what's happened, you haven't yet seen the beautiful monster mask.
That's exactly it. Then after you see it, you're waiting to see how they attempt to deal with this situation. And it's just a fast-paced, fast-moving, interesting, exciting story to watch unfold on screen. And then I guess the acting, too. Like, as we already mentioned, I mean...
Yeah, the acting is good. I think it's pretty good, even by today's standards. It's above average for a film in 1958, I think.
This could have gone downhill with lesser actors. And
for
really,
sure.
We're lucky that it didn't.
Because there is a silliness to the story.
Yeah, I mean, there's a silliness to the costume, but the costume doesn't feel silly when you finally see the mask, which is impressive.
Yeah, admittedly, the guy in the web looks a little silly. Maybe even more than a little. But, it's the end of the movie. I'm here for it.
I agree.
So do you want to talk King Kong versus Godzilla?
Oh my god, you know I do.
From 1962 comes King Kong versus Godzilla. This is Godzilla. This is the third Godzilla film. This is the first time Godzilla is in color. First time King Kong is in color, at least to my knowledge. Toho made a few King Kong movies. I think they made one or two after this. I think this is their first one. King Kong was actually, even in Japan, was kind of a better known figure than Godzilla was at this point, because this is 7 years after the last Godzilla movie. And yeah, it's like 30 years after the original King Kong movie, but King Kong's a classic. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, we've got these two monsters fighting, obviously. The plot's in the title. But this is... They do a few things here with the monsters, or mostly with Kong, because Godzilla is more or less presented the way as we saw him in the previous two films. He's a villain. He has the same characteristics that he's always had, I guess. But I like it in color now that we see that there's this blue when he's like breathing fire. His little dorsal fins are all blue
I like
and
that.
stuff. That looks
I like
kind of
that.
neat.
That's cool.
But they made King Kong kind of bumbling. And I read at some point that this was like an attempt to kind of humanize him, because he's the hero of the story. They want him to be sympathetic, so they basically just made him kind of dumb. And I think that's to the benefit of the movie, not necessarily in terms of me sympathizing with Kong, but it's pretty fun to just see him trip over things, this guy in the monkey suit.
Or trip down the side of Mount Fuji in a climactic fight.
That's, obviously we'll have to talk about that, because the movie... Okay, so King Kong vs. Godzilla, I've seen it a bunch of times, saw it so many times as a kid, always the dubbed version. This is not a very good movie, but it's a movie that holds a special place in my heart. And I think even watching it now, regardless of my nostalgia for it, I do think it's genuinely entertaining in a few parts. Those parts are mostly at the end, admittedly. But the giant octopus scene is kind of fun.
That's great. I love that.
I mean, the effects are kind of bad because the camera's constantly moving, which makes it look like everyone who's spliced into the foreground is moving when they're not. So, whatever. It's fun to see King Kong drink his berry juice and get drunk and fall
Berry
over.
booze.
So, as for our human characters, we've got a couple guys that work for a pharmaceutical company.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Sorry to cut you off. How does this movie start for you? How does this movie start?
Okay, this movie starts with, you see the globe,
Okay.
and somebody's talking about something, and then it's revealed that this is a television show that the pharmaceutical company is financing, even though it's a disaster and nobody watches it.
Now, is this television show like an American fella?
No.
And
Or maybe it was. I don't remember. I don't think so.
so
It wasn't speaking English.
Well, when I was watching, it starts out with this American fella who looks very American, like very American in the 60s. You know what I mean? He's got
Cowboy
the hair.
hat.
Yeah. Yeah, he's smoking Marlboros. But he's very American. It opens with him talking about climate change and glaciers
I
melting.
kind of vaguely remember that.
Okay,
from when
yeah.
I was a kid.
Yeah, and then he's talking about how there's a UN American submarine in the Arctic. And then
Okay, we have the submarine in my version.
Okay, yeah, but then right after that, he cuts to a guy, like another newscaster in Chile, who's experiencing lots of earthquakes.
Okay, yeah, earthquakes completely not part of the official Ishiro Honda directed film.
Okay, good.
This
Because
is the same director as the original film.
I knew this was going to be
Godzilla
interesting.
film.
Because as soon as I started this one, I was like, look, I know I'm not.
You're not watching the right movie. Okay.
I know I'm not watching this same one Patrick is watching. And
Well, anyways, this pharmaceutical company CEO, he's a goofy comic relief character. He's pissed off because his television ratings are terrible, and he wants something that will bring their TV ratings up. And there's this scientist that did some expedition at some remote island and said there's a monster there. And so pharmaceutical CEO, his brilliant idea is, let's bring the monster back and he can be our mascot. Okay, this is as dumb as it sounds, and it's beautiful. So the two people he sends are Osamu and Kazuo, one of whom, one's more serious than the other one's also kind of comic reliefy. If you watch the American dub, so I seem to recall him complaining about his corns a lot when they were hiking. You remember that?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. There's no speaking of corns in the Japanese film, but I always remember that because I'm like, what are corns when I was a kid? That's like, yeah, he just kind of gets sick when they're at the island. But anyways, they go to, well, first of all, one of them has a sister, and she's got a boyfriend. And the boyfriend, in one of the more memorable non-monster scenes, is showing off this like ultra thin string that he has, or like
Metal wire.
yeah, and he's taking it and he's just like swinging from the balcony, even though he doesn't tie it to anything over his head. He's just, it's really stupid, but it's a lot of fun. I remember that scene from when I was a kid. Anyways, that string comes back later. A lot of things actually are set up in this movie.
They are, yeah.
It's not willing to call it a great script by any means,
No.
but we learn early on that one of the pharmaceutical guys drums. Actually, both of them drum, I think, and that's important later.
See, I didn't learn any of that in...
Okay, well, yeah, because there's like a behind-the-scenes thing where they're shooting a commercial for the pharmaceutical companies, and one of the guys is drumming for the commercial, and he like is exhausted, and they're like, "Wait, what the hell are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, they couldn't find my buddy, and they really needed to shoot this commercial." So I think it's the other one that drums later in the movie, even though we established that this guy can drum. So it's a little weird, but
So here, I'm just gonna tell you, if you're like me and don't watch the sub version, you are immediately
Stupid.
lost. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You're an idiot because you cut from this American guy telling you crazy things like, Godzilla's.
okay. Well,
possibly
we do
back
have the American submarine. That's still. I'll get to that.
But then he talks about the berries, he's like, they're on an island, and a pharmaceutical
Okay, yeah.
company's trying to get there. And then it cuts to the scene with the four fellas at the pharmaceutical company sitting around the table, and one of them's the boss, and they're talking about the
Okay,
berries.
yeah, the goofy CEO guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, American submarine, they are investigating some kind of weird light source over at this glacier or iceberg. And of course, we remember from Godzilla Raids Again that Godzilla was trapped in ice, so this doesn't go over well. Godzilla, I guess, well, it's actually kind of, Godzilla doesn't really take them, I mean, he eventually takes them out, but they crash into the iceberg first, even.
They do, yeah.
So it's kind of on them, and then Godzilla, sinks them, I guess, but then he gets free. I like how within seconds of Godzilla freeing himself from the ice, he's got a battle with the military. Like, it's like they were ready for it. It's
that
great.
the scene where he frees himself from the ice is so exciting to watch because there's like a helicopter flying overhead.
Yeah.
And he's like breaking his way out of like this model iceberg. It's so cool, literally and figuratively.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So over on whatever island Kong is on, we get a very odd scene where the pharmaceutical guys are trying to talk to the natives, and they brought along another goofy side character, some Japanese guy in blackface,
Yeah.
who like translates for them, and yeah, he's dressed kind of like Waldo.
Yeah.
And then they're able to befriend the natives. And how do they do that, Jim?
With cigarettes.
With cigarettes and music.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the
A
radio.
kid even gets a cigarette. It's great. It's wonderful stuff.
He gets 2 cigarettes, and his mom takes one.
Well, his mom takes, the same kid who's nearly murdered by a giant octopus later in the film. But yeah, so they're all looking for Kong, but then one of the guys gets sick, or if you're watching Jim's version, his corns hurt, so he's just like bedridden from painful corns.
That's exactly
to be honest,
it.
they don't really explain what happens in the Japanese version. I know he gets like a lizard stuck on him and he's swinging that around for a while, but they just don't really explain it. He's just kind of sick. So when the kid goes to get him some berries or whatever, I guess they use that as medicine, the little hut that he's in where all the berry juice is attacked by a giant octopus, which is pretty cool. It's a real octopus in most of the shots, even like the special effects shots, because it's just rear screen projection, I guess.
I thought it was so impressive. Sorry to cut you off. I thought it was so impressive.
A lot of it is. I mean, it's
models.
not. Yeah, I like the model stuff here, and then obviously Kong gets over here, and Kong. I wanted more from this scene. I wanted Kong to kill this thing. Instead he kind of scares it off. They fight a bit.
Throw some rocks.
Kong throws a lot of rocks in this movie. That's kind of his main fighting method.
That's better than throwing shit, I guess.
Yeah, you're saying that the film is worse if it's more realistic and he just throws shit at things.
Yeah, just piles of shit.
So anyways, Kong has saved the day. The kid's okay. The kid's mom saved him. And then Kong just drinks the berry juice, which is conveniently in very large cauldrons or whatever, that he can pick them up. And this is where we get some, for lack of a better term, beauty shots of the Kong mask. Or maybe I think it's a hand puppet in the close-ups. But
I like how you're like lack of a better term.
Well, yeah, no, this is a janky-looking monkey. I mean, he does not look good. This is not a good Kong look.
Dude, the monkey, there's so many scenes where they show up like a close-up of his face and his pupils are like staring in different directions. Like it looks like the monkey was hit in the face with a frying pan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, he probably deserves it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is not a good King Kong look. It just isn't. He looks bad. The face is really weird. The body, it's whatever. It's a gorilla suit. Like, it's fine. The actor moving around, yeah, he walks on 2 legs the entire time, but he walks a little different. He walks like you would when you're imitating a gorilla walking on 2 legs, I guess.
You know
that's
what he
fine.
walks like exactly? And I was watching this movie. I took my glasses off to test my theory. It looks like the exact same suit that person used to fake that famous Bigfoot photo. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The guy's got like the same walk and everything. It's like same color.
He's got his chest out, He's puffed up chest kind of thing. But anyways, Kong passes out from drunkenness. Well, they actually, it's not just the drinking, because then the entire village does this like chant and dancing, and there's drums, and that like lulls him to sleep.
Yeah.
So at this point, though, back in Japan, even though pharmaceutical CEO guy is really excited because they're about to get their monster, all of the news is talking about Godzilla, and he's kind of like, well, shit, we're gonna have a monster, but nobody cares. They only like Godzilla. So there's a very minor amount of like satire going on, I think, with the I don't even know how much of this is in the dubbed version. I have a feeling a lot of this guy is cut out the movie.
No, he's trust me, he's in there way too much.
Okay. Yeah, no, he's very goofy. He's almost every character in this movie is like a comic relief character. First of all, it's just it's too much. But this is in the Godzilla series, we're getting more and more close to making these movies kind of for kids. We're not fully there yet, but we're only the third movie in, but we're already completely gone from the realization of the horrors of atomic weaponry and stuff like that. That shit is gone. Like the social commentary is just like, yeah, it's a monster movie. Who cares?
Well, I was surprised when Godzilla starts kind of approaching Tokyo from a distance, and they're like, "Are we going to use the atomic bombs yet?" And it's like in the first movie, they would never have talked about using atomic weaponry and just dropping it all over Japan. You know what I mean? Like actually, I guess they did, didn't they? Maybe.
Well, they used the oxygen destroyer. Did Japan have atomic weapons in '54?
I don't think so. Well, I mean, the Americans were there, so.
Well, that's true. Yeah. All right. Well, at any rate, they bring Kong back. He's on the raft, and now with the announcement of a new monster in town, all of a sudden Kong is starting to get this pharmaceutical company a lot of good publicity. People are forgetting about Godzilla because Kong is the new star of the show. The goofy CEO flies out to meet them on the ship and nearly blows up Kong on accident because Kong is on this raft and it's like wired to detonate in case anything goes wrong, and he like leans on the thing not realizing what it is.
Yeah, that's great.
There's eventually the government or the military or something like boards their ship and says that they don't have permission to bring Kong into the country, so technically they're smuggling him, but that doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, it literally goes nowhere.
Yeah, it goes nowhere, but eventually Kong wakes up, and so they try to blow it up. The CEO this time doesn't want it to blow up, but he ends up falling on the, what do you call those things? The little...
detonator?
He falls on it, but it doesn't work, and they try to blow him up, but it doesn't work. So Kong is free, as, of course, is Godzilla. Their first meeting is in the beautiful hillside of some backlot set. It's like I almost hesitate to call it a fight. Kong throws a rock or two. I think he throws two rocks. One hits him. One hits Godzilla. The other doesn't.
Yeah.
Kong sucks. And then Godzilla just breathes some fire and kind of like scares him away.
It's like the most anticlimactic first meeting of two powerhouse characters you've ever seen in your life.
But to be fair, this movie exists in a universe where King Kong is powered by electricity, so right now he is not capable of taking on Godzilla.
Electric Kong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only way he has a chance. He eventually chews on some power lines and is able to fight him. So, what's the next? Okay, so Kong at one point destroys a train and then kidnaps one of the main character's sisters. Mm-hmm. And then he goes and climbs a building which is smaller than him, which he more like steps on it, like, but it supports his weight somehow. Wikipedia says that's the National Diet Building or something like that, so it's like some Japanese landmark of some sort. Yeah, National Diet Building. Oh yeah, it looks exactly the same. Good model then, or set, I guess. Oh wait,
now is the National Diet
both
building...
houses of the National Diet of Japan meet? So I thought it was a literal diet. It's not. The diet is like their government.
Yeah, I was just looking that up because I was confused.
Yeah, it makes more sense because I don't know, how many countries have buildings dedicated to diets, Sure, you have a health ministry of some kind, but...
Fun fact, in Japan, they have a fat tax. If
they
you go
do,
to the doctor,
I have heard that.
Yeah, if you go to the doctor and they measure your waist and it's too big, you get taxed.
Right.
Also, watching this dubbed, all the English voice actors are mispronouncing every single Japanese word or place name. So at one point they're talking about Hokkaido, and Godzilla's going to land in Hokkaido, but they're all calling it Hokkaido,
Oh no.
Hokkaido, Hakiado, like Hakimoto. You're like, okay.
Tokayo.
Yeah.
It was a simpler time. It was a time when Sean Connery could put on Asian makeup, I guess, right? So, anyways, so Kong is on top of this, the Capitol building, I guess you could say. And he's holding this woman. And of course, Kong, obviously, he's Godzilla size. So he's, King Kong in the original King Kong is what, 25, 30 feet tall?
Yeah, something like that.
King Kong is a couple 100 feet tall. Again, he's like bigger than this building that he's standing on. So they want to figure out, like, okay, how do we get him down without hurting the person he's holding? And then then they remember, oh, hang on, we can lull him to sleep because we can feed him berry juice, and then play them. They played the music, which I guess they recorded. It involves one of the main characters drumming, which I didn't think was necessary given that there's drumming on the recording.
Yeah, exactly.
But then they don't even feed him the berry juice. They more just like blow up berries above his head, so they kind of fall down.
It's like
to
berry
him.
mist. It's like berry vaporizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Mist.
It's not juice at that point, but it's a wonderful little scene. I like when he falls and just breaks busts part of the building. Like that's just
great.
fun.
I love it.
Then what do? Because they need Kong to fight Godzilla, because at this point every effort to stop Godzilla has not worked. Which there's a great scene earlier where Godzilla basically falls down a trap door.
I wanted to talk about
hilarious.
that. That is my favorite. I was sitting here singing my apartment.
That shot is hilarious. He's just like walking around, and it's it's the guy in the Godzilla suit, and they slow it down just enough, to convince you kind of that this is a big guy, and then they have like a trap, like they cut out like a square mile of the ground and put like a fake it's a pit.
Yeah,
he falls in a pit.
That's exactly what it is. It reminds me of there's a fantastic bit in Jackass. I forget who it is, but he digs a hole. He digs a huge pit in his dad's front yard and then covers it with like lattice and grass to make it look like it's still part of the yard. And then his dad's driving like a lawnmower, like a riding lawnmower over it, and he drives right into the pit. And his dad's Phil. He's this big fat dude, Phil, and he just crashes like 10 feet down into this pit. And that's exactly like what happened to Godzilla. It was the dumbest thing. And I'm like, are you serious? And they built this, like you said, this giant pit with like, it was like rebar.
It's an acre or two, given how big he is,
Yeah,
it's a couple acres.
It was so funny. Watching him tumble in was my favorite thing I've ever seen. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, again, with Godzilla, the original film is a masterpiece. The original film does everything possible to convince you that it's not a guy in a costume.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing this costume in broad daylight in color.
Yeah, it does not
can't
look
really
great.
suspend your disbelief anymore.
Yeah.
And so at this point, it's just kind of fun to see a guy in a costume go through shit like that. It's like go to a sporting event, and at any time like a mascot trips over something, it's always
that's the
funny. Like
best.
there was this YouTube video. I think there was some car dealership, I think in Minnesota. It's called, I think it's White Bear. I think it's Toyota. No, White Bear Mitsubishi. Excuse me. I remember this from when I was an undergrad. This is a long time ago. But they have like a guy in a costume, and it's just like a white bear costume. But they were shooting a commercial, and they did air a commercial. I don't think I've ever seen the final commercial, but there was a video on YouTube that got popular because it was all the outtakes because they were filming on an ice rink, because it's Minnesota, and the it was supposed to be, there's like the car dealer is like there, he's telling you something, and then the white bear is supposed to kind of slide up there, but he doesn't have skates on because he's got these giant mascot feet, and he just kept falling and falling and falling, and it was take after take after take, and it was just like, it's the funniest thing. But I can imagine being in that suit. You hate your life. You hate everything that led you to that point. But anyways,
Well, with this
Hopefully that video's still around. I haven't seen it in about 10 years.
With this Godzilla movie, imagine how difficult it would have been to like maneuver in that dumb costume and like crush buildings instead of just trip over them. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, there's a I think it might be in Mothra versus Godzilla, but there are like a few, for lack of a better word, I'll say bloopers. There are a few bloopers that kind of make their way into the series. There's one scene where the Godzilla head catches fire, and they leave that in a movie because it looks awesome. But meanwhile, if you're the actor inside that, you're like scared to death.
That's awesome.
I think it's in Mothra versus Godzilla where he like trips at one point and they leave it in,
shit.
and he trips into a model and tears it down, and they're like, yeah, it looks pretty cool, let's keep it, you know. Well, plus you're not rebuilding that model just for another take.
Looks awesome, John. We're leaving it in the final edit.
Yeah. So there's some fun Godzilla bloopers throughout the series. And this, I mean, there's not any here. It's just fun to see a guy in a big, dumb, bulky costume like that fall over, I guess. But yeah, so all the military's attempts to kill Godzilla have failed. And so they want Godzilla and Kong to fight. So they have to bring Kong to Godzilla, who's just chilling on Mount Fuji. And so they put a giant net underneath him, and then use that super strong twine that we talked about earlier and tie that to balloons, and they drag that sucker up into the air with some helicopters, and it's amazing.
It is
the shots of that janky-ass Kong costume just kind of going up in the air when he's hanging, because they don't even have him, like, his legs aren't hanging
He's
freely.
Not even in,
One
like,
of them's, like, stuck
position.
Up.
Yeah,
exactly. He's in the position that your dog is when he's lifting his leg on a mailbox. You know,
he's in the position.
That's what he looks like.
He's in the position that your
funny.
dog is when you pick your dog up and just hold him. You know what I mean? Like hold him from like his front legs, pretty much.
And they eventually spot Godzilla on Mount Fuji, and they
airdrop him.
So they drop Kong off. And this might be my favorite part of the movie, because they blow up all the balloons, so Kong falls, and they couldn't like drop him off closer to the ground. They drop him from like a couple hundred feet in the air, and he goes down, he hits the ground, and then just sleds his way into Godzilla and knocks him over.
It's great.
And then they fight for a bit, and then, well, actually, pretty much after that, because he knocks Godzilla over, and then Kong gets up and like immediately hides.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Godzilla has his back to him, then he kind of fights by grabbing his tail, and the fight's kind of awkward, but it's, you know, it's a little fun because, again, dumb costumes. But Kong is getting his ass handed to him.
Severely.
Severe, yeah. Godzilla's kicking the absolute shit out of him. It doesn't help, too, that at one point Kong picks up a rock. Again, that's kind of a signature move in this movie, and he's going to throw it, and then he like trips over himself or something. Again, they tried to make Kong goofy. That is a conscious effort. This isn't embarrassingly bad or anything. It's just stupid, and it's comedic. And yeah, there's a thing when like Kong, he's like a pitcher. He's like winding up and he's throwing it, but his release like makes him flip over himself, and he knocks himself out by hitting his head on the rock. He gets knocked out twice in this scene. He's got severe concussions for sure.
Severe head trauma.
But at one point, of course, he chews on some electrical wires and then becomes supercharged Kong, and this is where he's actually able to put up a fight, and he kind of zaps Godzilla, and they're fighting. They're at some like coastal town or something. I don't know what this is, but they're at a castle. They call it a castle. It's like that pagoda building, that pagoda style or whatever.
Yeah, I mean it's a traditional Japanese castle. I'll give it to them. Yeah,
exactly. Because they fought Godzilla burnt Anguirus to a crisp in front of that thing in Osaka in Godzilla Raids Again. So they fight. They fight in a way where the castle's between them. So it's just the castle gets torn apart, which is great.
To anybody who hasn't seen this movie, when we say they fight, like, I think you mentioned this earlier, I don't remember, but they're not like throwing punches. It's two people in suits like grabbing each other by the shoulders.
Yeah.
And just kind of like shaking each other.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Shimmying.
I mean, that's the little dark secret of but of the Godzilla series. Whenever, I mean, it's not a guy in a suit anymore, obviously, but in the classic Godzilla costume movies, Godzilla, he's a dinosaur, he's a dragon, he breathes fire, and yet 90% of the time when he fights, he just fights like a human. Like he rarely uses his teeth. Yeah. He's just kind of like wrestling, and he does throw punches, not in this movie necessarily, but there's a great gif from one of the movies in the 90s when he's just like punching the shit out of Mechagodzilla. It's awesome. So yeah, it's like they don't really do a whole lot with Godzilla's like fighting style to make him not seem like a guy in a movie or a guy in a costume. He does a lot of tail fighting in this movie, I guess.
Yeah, he's swinging it around a bit, which you can.
Oh, he does the awesome drop kick, which is the second time Kong gets knocked out. He does. There's a brief moment of stop motion because Godzilla, I guess, uses his tail to go up and he kicks Kong back, and Kong stumbles down a couple 1,000 feet and then hits his head on a rock again. That's one of the better moments of the movie, to be fair. And then, but yeah, that's all earlier than this, because this fight at the castle is the end. They both fall into the water together, and then all of our main characters who have been watching, they see Kong emerges from the water and starts swimming away, and I don't even remember what the line was, but they have some dumb comment about, these Godzilla movies are really big on like, they'll use like the final line or so to like have some kind of moral or scientific kind of message, and it's like something about like, oh, and they'll continue to be monsters so long as we don't treat the earth right, or something like that. It's just like really slapped together, and it's like, yeah, okay, you can maybe trick a child into thinking this movie has a message, but it doesn't. So Jim, what did you think of King Kong versus Godzilla?
Oh man, it was horrible.
What?
Yeah, well, no, it was like horrible in that, like, it's not a fantastic movie. It's not that great, but it was so much. I got so much pleasure from watching it. It was so enjoyable to watch. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was. I don't think it was anything special, but if you got a thing for watching two adult men wrestle each other in monster costumes in Japanese movies, then yeah, this is your jam. This is great.
Yep, it's my berry jam.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, your drunk berry jam.
I'm a big Godzilla fan. I mean, I love the original King Kong, but overall, like, Kong has never been that interesting to me. He's just a big gorilla. And here he's not a big gorilla. He's a person in a big gorilla suit, basically, because they really anthropomorphize him quite a bit here, and it does make him very silly. I like that Godzilla is treated seriously. I appreciate that. They go a little too far with Kong in terms of if they're trying to make a good movie. But again, for just, I don't think this movie is very good for just me sitting down and watching it. Like, I think all the dumb things they did with Kong are probably to the benefit of my enjoyment, because it's incredibly stupid to see Kong try and throw a rock and then flip himself over and knock himself out. Like, that's great. It's like the White Bear Mitsubishi the commercial, or the outtakes for it.
This is like I'm not going to say like our perfect drive-in movie, but this is what you kind of want once in a while at the drive-in. You know what I mean?
Sure. Pure silliness, pure unadulterated silliness.
Yeah, and it's great. For me, because I have to admit, I haven't seen any other Godzilla movies, not even the second one that has already been covered on this podcast. I know. Don't worry. I'll watch it, though, before our wrap-up. Don't worry. But I was shocked at how differently the character of Godzilla looked, I guess, and acted and was handled from the first movie to this movie. Yeah. And how differently King Kong was handled from, like, the original.
Well, yeah, and there really is no comparison between Toho Kong and RKO Kong. Like, they're different creatures.
Yeah, exactly.
They're different characters, I guess. But as for Godzilla, yeah, he looks a lot worse. He just looks better in black and white. I do appreciate the blue, when he's breathing his atomic breath and everything, but overall, like, yeah, it doesn't look great, but it's fine, whatever.
But something that continued throughout the Godzilla movies, for me so far anyways, was the impressive model work.
Okay.
For me, one of the most impressive scenes was like an army fight that Godzilla has near the beginning, when all these like anti-aircraft guns and like cannons.
Once again, though, the tanks look awful, But
The
yes,
tanks look
otherwise I
awful,
agree.
but I'm amazed
Yeah.
at how they were like. I guess they were all remote
I like how he
controlled or
melts them.
something.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, the melting tank, that was awesome. But like all of that stuff was just so much like it was just so enjoyable to watch. There was also a bit when Christ, I forget the character's name, but when he went,
I didn't even bother referring to the names after a
yeah.
certain point. I'm just like, I listed their names and I don't know. I don't think I ever knew the CEO's name. He's just goofball.
Yeah, well, when the one fella in the Jeep went to go get his sister, he's like driving along like those mountain roads. There was model shots of a Jeep driving along a mountain road interspliced with the man actually driving the Jeep, and I had to rewind it and rewatch it because I was confused as to which one was the model. Like I was like, wait a minute. Like it actually got me. I was like, this is impressive. This is great. Yeah, it's just such a goofy, goofball, schlocky movie, but it's so enjoyable to watch.
You know, I think we've got two movies. I think a lot of people that will not have seen the original Fly would probably assume these two movies are similar in terms of kind of tone and silliness, and that's really not the case. But this movie is that, you know, dumb, stupid, like, kind of makes you feel like a child. And I'm not saying that. I mean, yeah, I saw this movie a lot as a kid, but there's just something so childlike about seeing a guy in a Godzilla costume fall through a trapdoor, you know, like it's just
scene.
brings out the inner child.
Yeah.
And that's what over time, that's what I've really come to love about Godzilla. I think Godzilla can be done in a very serious way. Obviously, we saw it with the original. We've seen it with Shin Godzilla. But, you know, the sillier the Godzilla is, even if those movies, I didn't watch them as a kid, they still kind of make me feel like a kid. Because, you know, because it actually gets sillier than this, believe it or not. There are a lot sillier movies than King Kong vs. Godzilla in the series.
No.
But
oh, no.
yes. Well, son of Godzilla. I mean, you know, once Godzilla has a son.
Yeah, I'll have to take your word for it, and I will not be watching them until they show up in the rotation for our podcast.
All right. That's fair. All right, Jim, which of these two movies did you enjoy more?
Well, you know, this is actually a really tough question, because I really thoroughly enjoyed everything about The Fly. I thought it was all around a great movie, but I also loved the stupidity present throughout.
Yeah, you enjoy them for very different reasons.
Exactly.
I agree. And I'm going to just be upfront. I agree with you. This is one of the harder, which movie do I choose? Which movie is more enjoyable? This is probably the hardest one hardest question I've had to face in here for quite a while.
I feel like I should go with The Fly because I probably enjoyed that movie more just for everything about that movie I enjoyed. But I think I'm going to have to go with Godzilla just because I laughed so hard watching it. While watching it, I loved it. But how about you, buddy?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely tough decision. I will say just a couple individual moments of King Kong vs. Godzilla trump anything in The Fly. The drop kick, the Kong knocking himself out after throwing a baseball, and obviously the Godzilla falling in the pit. That stuff is better than anything in The Fly in terms of just enjoyability for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But overall, I think The Fly, the movie as a whole works. I mean, obviously it works better, but to me, I enjoyed it more. King Kong vs. Godzilla has that. If you could cut out 15 minutes, you know, because really all we want to see is the big fight scenes and stuff. And there's some enjoyment. Like, I love the guy swinging around from outside his apartment and on the metal twine or whatever. Like, there's some little moments of enjoyability. But, I mean, for the most part, The Fly is just consistently entertaining all the way through. There's nary a dull moment, where there are plenty of dull moments in King Kong vs. Godzilla.
This one was a tough choice. I would have picked both together if I could, as equally enjoyable for me.
Oh yeah, I'm giving a thumbs up to both of them in terms of just pure enjoyment. But King Kong vs. Godzilla is a bad movie, but that's fine, whatever.
But how do you think this stacks up as a double feature?
I think this is an easier question than the last one. I think it's a very good double feature. We've got classic monster mayhem in both movies. We've got, in both cases, there's some not weird, but there's some cautionary scientific message. In King Kong vs. Godzilla, it's literally only in the last line of the movie because it's just lip service to having a message, where The Fly really is all about that. Mm-hmm. But I think The Fly, as like this late 50s it's a little schlocky because it's a guy in a fly mask, but overall is
Yeah.
the serious exploration of when science can go too far, versus King Kong versus Godzilla, just utter silliness from beginning to end. I think that's an interesting combination. I think you get your exciting, well done science fiction in the first half, and then you get your terrible, stupid, goofy science fiction in your second half.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, yeah, and just kind of aping off something you said, aping off something you said.
Oh.
The Fly is a cautionary tale about when science goes too far, and King Kong versus Godzilla is not a cautionary tale, but it's a movie where they keep pushing science further. Just like stop Godzilla. Yeah, they're like, hey, guys, quickly, let's build like an electric barrier. That'll stop him. Wait, no, let's get some electricity to King Kong. Wait, how do we knock him out?
What's with the Kong electricity plot?
Electric Kong.
Plot is not really the right word, but that whole thing, really weird. And I had heard, this could be incorrect, but I had heard originally it was going to be Frankenstein, and that's why the electricity's there.
Oh.
I don't know how that would have worked. Oh. But because there's no establishment of King Kong loves electricity or anything in the original King Kong, obviously. I mean, he dies on a giant lightning rod, but that's completely unrelated,
But yeah, like I think this is such a fantastic double feature, and it's also, I mean, because again, obviously, as per usual, I agree with most of, if not all of your points that you've already brought up. But you begin this double feature with this really serious, or as serious as you can have with a guy in a fly costume, but you begin with this serious science fiction drama about the dangers of science and these scary things that can happen in the 1950s where anything is possible, and then you end with
1950s Canada specifically.
Yeah, 1950s Montreal.
1950s
land of
Quebec,
opportunity,
where science has gone too far.
Yeah, and then you end with this stupid schlocky thing where Godzilla or where King Kong picks up an octopus that like sucks itself to his face, and he
that was
throws
kind
it
of
down.
a neat shot, by the way. I'm assuming they did it in reverse because that's just a prop octopus, so it was probably on his face and he threw it down.
I think so.
Yeah, that looked kind of neat. I mean, it looked weird and looked like sped up almost, but it was neat.
But yeah, this is fantastic. I would like, Patrick, if we have a dream, if our dream of owning our own movie theater where we could just show double features and do a podcast in ever becomes a reality, this would be a double feature I would want at our theater.
See, if we ever owned a movie theater, though, I'm showing Pieces every single day, so I don't know if that's going to work out. just being honest,
Okay.
So Jim and I are doing something a little bit different next week. So we are splitting up our second season into two parts. Originally, ideally, we've done, this is our 15th episode this season. The original plan was to do 30, so this is the nice halfway point, but, something might happen. Maybe it'll be 25. I don't know, As of when I'm recording this, I literally do not know what country I'll be living in when this episode comes out. So, things are complicated. But for our halfway point, we were originally going to do something similar to what we did with our end of season 1, our recap thing. But then I'm like, yeah, we'll probably do that at the end of season 2. Why don't we do something different? So here's what we're doing. We're doing a double feature mock draft. And I'm going to explain it a bit here, too, because I'm not 100% sure Jim knows everything that I have in mind here.
No,
but,
not at all.
So we have covered, and I'm opening this up to season 1 and season 2. Okay?
Okay.
But we have covered now 68 movies. Not counting the commentary tracks available on our Patreon. Patreon.com/Revenge of the Drive-In. We've done 68 movies. We are going to have a draft where, Jim picks a movie that we've done, I pick a movie that we've done, and we're going to go through, I think, 20 rounds, and we're going to pick movies, and then we're going to see how we can create the best double feature out of our selections. All right, is that a decent way to describe it, Jim? Are you following?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay, so hopefully our listeners are as well. But that's what we're going to be doing next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, who knows? Might be a super long episode. I really have no idea what to anticipate because But yeah, but Jim, you're going to get the first pick. I have no idea what you're picking.
Ooh.
It's probably going to be From Russia with Love, but I don't technically know. It's just a guess.
I think I know what my first pick is going to be, and it's going to shock you. And that's not a reference into what movie I'm going to pick.
Okay, good, because God damn it, I need Shocker. I will trade up to get Shocker early if I have to. But yes, that's what we're doing. So feel free to join us next week. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at Drive-In Podcast. Check out our Patreon for early access to episodes and trailers, as well as access to commentary tracks on films such as Saw, The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, etc. And yeah, but thanks for joining us. And Jim, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Talk to you later. And talk to you later, audience. Bye for now.